Hi, welcome to the Barmy Army Isolation Podcast number 2. Tonight I'm joined by Fiona, Ian and Jack. So firstly, how are you all doing under the current circumstances? Fiona?
Missing sport, football, everything being cancelled. But other than that, okay.
Jack?
I'm doing fine. I've got soup and food in general until the next millennium. So, yeah, doing well.
Ian?
Yeah, not too bad. Not bad at all, actually. It was a bit. I'll be honest, it was a bit frightening to begin with, but now I'm in the, got used to it. So.
Right, so tonight I thought what we would do is do something a bit different. Instead of talking about the season, which we will talk about, we're going to talk about, I think, the games against Manchester City. Now, for me, the games against City are one of the first that I always look out for. Manchester boy, local derbies. So I always want to beat City. As much as Liverpool are fiercest rivals, there's nothing better than beating your local rivals. So when the fixtures released all those months ago, what were your thoughts on our first game being against City? Jack?
That it's a fix. But other than that, with the women, it's a different story really than to the men. I mean, with the men, yes, Liverpool are our fiercest rivals. But with the women, we're still kind of creating those rivals. It's still fresh. And considering City are one of the most successful women's teams, then, it was the biggest match up to that point, I think, for all of us. And the idea of it being at the Etihad and actually seeing what we're worth against one of the top teams in the league right off the bat, it was special. And the result obviously didn't go our way, but it was a special day.
Fiona?
Following on from the World Cup, I thought it seemed like the FA had organised it kind of to build on that, grow women's football. And yeah, the first game of the new league, great to judge ourselves against top 3 teams. So again, really good to kind of get that started. Yeah, it would have been nice to probably start against a weaker team and ease ourselves in, but that fierce rivalry, we had a while to prepare for it as well, so you can do your marketing for it, drum up the fans as well. So I think it really added to it as well. So I think, yeah, it was a good game to start off with.
Ian?
Me and Shane said after the game against Lewis on the last day of the previous season, we both said City first game of the season, it's going to happen. So wasn't surprising. I'm with Jack and Fiona. The FA set that up deliberately. I can't blame them for doing it. I think we'd all do that in the same situation. I was kind of glad it was away because I don't know why it's just because I wanted to go to the Academy ground and I wanted to see if we could outnumber them. But when it got moved, that obviously changed the situation a bit. But it didn't surprise me that the FA tried to capture, as Fiona said, coming on from the World Cup. England did fairly well, build on it, and go from there. You just have to look at our first 3 fixtures to see what the FA were doing.
So you've mentioned it. They obviously moved the game from the Academy Stadium to the Etihad. You think that was a good move on the FA's part, Fiona?
Yeah, I think particularly because the Academy Stadium is quite small, we know we'll bring numbers, and particularly if you can drum up the interest from the World Cup and having it as the first game, you can advertise it well. I think that was a good move on the FA's behalf. I know they are interested in having occasional games at big stadiums like that, and I think it wasn't a a bad decision. And they were making you pay for tickets. Like some of the Chelsea one was free, whereas here City were asking for money, so you don't get the people who buy a ticket and don't turn up. So we had a good attendance, and I think that really added to the atmosphere. So yeah.
Jack, obviously you go to the Old Trafford to see the men. So was it a surprise to you that they moved it to the Etihad?
No, I wasn't surprised, and like Fiona said, for publicity reasons, to first Manchester derby for the women, try to drum up support for the game. No, it wasn't a surprise. Was it the right move? Yeah, probably it was, but Casey, she likes to say, and I agree with her, that fill up the small stadiums first on a regular basis before you think about taking them to the big stadiums, and I do see that point of view as well personally, but as a one-off, it was the right call. In regards to free tickets, I'm not sure if everyone paid there. Like, I think there might have been some freebies. Maybe not for everyone, but I think that there were maybe for children, that kind of thing, which also in the long run kind of makes sense to try and draw children into the game, and hopefully they come back. So, but yeah. Overall, I think it was the right decision.
Ian?
As I said, I wanted to be at the Academy Stadium because I wanted to show we could outnumber them. Because if I'm honest, if it had been played at the Academy Stadium, I don't think it would have been advertised or sold as well as it was. The only reason it was is because it went to the Etihad and they had to fill it. I think Jack was right. I think if you paid for an adult, I think you got a couple of children in for free. So yeah, it was a great attendance, don't get me wrong, and it was a good atmosphere, but I would have personally preferred it at the Academy Stadium, and fill that out, sell that out. You could probably get a better atmosphere in a much closer knit ground like we have, full, rather than two tiers of the Etihad empty. But I can understand why the FA and Man City did it. It's to promote the women's game, get people in to watch it, build it off the World Cup. But I would have preferred it to be at the Academy Stadium.
Go on, Jack.
Yeah, in regards to the atmosphere, I think City, in their own way, they did things to prevent at least our atmosphere as well by splitting us up. I think that they knew what they were doing, personally. Maybe I'm being a bit conspiracy theorist here, but they spread us out a bit. The core Barmy Army members. So I'm not saying that we didn't support. I'm not saying that we didn't have songs going on. We did for the full 90 minutes as opposed to the other side. But I think that it could have been louder, it could have been better, and City did their best to prevent that.
Well, that brings me on to my next point, or my next question then. So obviously it was at the Etihad. I think possibly for the first time in a women's WSL game, there was an away end, and obviously we were segregated. Do you think that to take the WSL and the women's game to the next level, it needs that, the away end and the segregation, or do you think something completely different? Ian?
It's a tough one. There are there's members of us who are staunch people who want an away end, want to be segregated, want to be able to make our own noise away from everybody else, and I can completely agree with their point of view. However, you have the women's football supporters who've been supporting the game for years. Obviously, we're fairly new. We're only into our second year. We might obviously have to lose the second year, depending how things go. But segregation, I enjoy it. But then there's obviously the Storm women's game sport. It's meant to be a family atmosphere, all getting together, all mingle and chat and have stories. But as a football fan, I want to be with my own. I want to be with fellow United fans. I don't mind having a chat with a rival fan outside for 5 or 10 minutes, or might be a quick drink after a game or something like that. But game time, that's where the line is drawn. I would prefer. I think going forward, you will see more segregation, especially in the big games. Arsenal, Chelsea. Probably go in the future. Probably see those start to be segregated as well at places like Kingsmeadow and Boreham Wood. So it wouldn't surprise me if that keeps going.
Fiona?
I think for the big games, in like when it is at the Etihad or Stamford Bridge, or in the future if it ever goes to Old Trafford, I think for those particular stadiums it worked really well because it helps us to build that atmosphere. You can have all the United fans singing together and all the City fans together, and they can sing if they want there. And I enjoy it at LSV when we have our away end for the City game. Then they had a little away section. So you could do other things as well. So you could have your away end, your home end. You could have a neutral area, I suppose, if you want. Or it's not strictly enforced either. So I know there were some United fans at the Etihad in the City part.
Yeah.
So these things can happen, and it's not the end of the world. I particularly like when they do the away end, when they don't allocate seats as well, because then we can group all together. Whereas if we, as the Barmy Army, want to have 30 seats together and we all have to allocate seats, it can get quite messy. And particularly because we like to be quite vocal, whereas some fans at women's games don't want to be, which is fine. But obviously they don't want to then sit behind us if we're singing all game. Yeah, I think that there's room for improvement anyway.
I mean, that was one of the issues we had because when the tickets came out, we all went to buy as a group and we had to do in 3 separate transactions. Now, luckily enough, we got near to each other. Now, Jack, we're all at the game, and I saw you having a bit of needle with a couple of City fans.
No, I didn't, really have that much like going on with anyone. They're like, I'm a bad person, and therefore I influence people, especially children, in the wrong way. I'm sorry. So there was like a row of kids in front, and at least a few of them were noticeably City fans. So when we were singing things like "You've only come to see United," a few of them turned back to me and they're like, and I was like, so just a bit of banter with them, which I think is necessary. I think it is necessary. I mean, if you want to talk about segregation, in order to make the games matter, in order to build rivalries, which is what football is all about, you need it. You need segregation, because if everyone's just friends with everyone, then it takes out that rivalry, that spark that is needed. I'm not saying you can't have maybe a neutral section, but in my mind there should be home, neutral, away, and that's the way to go forward, because you need that. You need rivalry. You need banter.
I couldn't agree with you more, Jack. I think it's where, for me, I think the women's game needs to go. I know there's been some the pundits for the women's game who have said exactly the same. And I also agree with Ian and Fiona, where they're saying it's all right to be friends outside the ground, but when you get in, you want to be with like-minded fans of the same, doing the same, singing the same songs. Yeah, no, I'm in agreement with all. I think that's where it needs to go. The game itself, obviously, it was the first time of the first game of the season. The formation and the team. Were you shocked by anything in that, Fiona?
I don't think so. I think most of it was as expected. Bring the new signings into the team. I wasn't 100% confident on the defense because we had Hayley Ladd in there and at one point and that kind of thing. And some of the substitutions you could maybe question. If we're trying to go for the game, but you could tell when you were watching the match that some of the players were tired towards the end, and so kind of Casey couldn't really do much else. So yeah, I think it wasn't really surprising to me.
Jack?
I think I was surprised. Unless I'm mistaken, I think Tooney started that match. And that in its own right was a bit of a surprise. Nothing against her, but I thought that we would try for something else there. But yeah, as Nat has just popped up with Hayley at right back. Mind you, she did well at right back. It's not what we expected maybe on the day. I was thinking, are we going to maybe try something a bit different in terms of the formation, maybe go 3 at the back or something like that, just to try and throw off City and maybe be a bit more compact at the back and go out on counter. But yeah, there were a couple of surprises in there. And to be fair, I think that was probably one of our better performances this season, and we were a bit unlucky to leave without anything in the match. I mean, at the end of the day, we were beaten by a wonder goal, and we were close on a couple of occasions to getting a goal ourselves there.
Ian?
It did surprise me a bit, when you see Hayley Ladd at right back. I was under the influence. She was a defensive midfielder, someone who would sit in front of the back four to protect them. And there's something we screamed about last season that we needed going forward. We needed someone to anchor in front of the defence because we couldn't just keep moving Alex Greenwood into that position from left back, which is what we did in the big games last season. So to see her at right back surprised me. But then otherwise, the rest of the team didn't really surprise me. Lotta, I think, was always going to come in at left back. You paid money to bring her in over the summer. So her starting. And do you know what? She didn't actually have a bad game until she was substituted. Then we didn't see her for a while, which that's the one thing that did surprise me. But Jackie showed what she could do in the centre part. She was really unlucky not to get that an equaliser in the dying minutes of the game. But as Jack said, we lost to a wonder strike. Mary had no chance of keeping that out in a million years. Yes, we gave the ball away at the back, and that's what they scored from. But you still have to hit the target from the range that she did. And if you had told me when I went into the game thinking hope for a draw, positive result, and get the point. But to only lose 1-0 to Man City, and the performance that the girls put in, there was a lot of it. We could have been 1 up. That in that save from Eddie Roebuck from Jane Ross in the first half. The game could have been completely different. So, no, I thought first game for the first majority. That's the first time most of those players playing together competitively. So to come out with the result we did, yeah, it was disappointing to lose, but all in all, I thought, it was a good performance, and as Jack said, it was probably one of our better performances of the season.
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of things that I picked. You know, obviously Lotta was subbed during the second half. I didn't think she was playing that badly. But the one thing that I found out recently was that Lotta obviously made her competitive debut in the league against City away, and so did Patrice Evra. And they were both subbed at exactly the same times. And we know the player that Pat went on to be. So fingers crossed. The same with Lotta. I mean, we had our chances to score in that game. You know, there was the Jane Ross chance that I think we all and the Jackie chance. I think that game, like, you know, we've all said, I think that game could have easily have gone our way instead of theirs. And as Ian said, we had a bumper crowd there, over 30,000, was it?
Yeah, actually, I was just putting it up on the computer to see what it was.
So there's all of that. And then obviously we had a few weeks apart, and then the Conti Cup games were drawn in the groups. And surprisingly, we got City in the group. And then we brought them to LSV. So I thought that game, personally, I thought that game was completely different to the game at the Etihad. I thought we played it in our way, not at the City way. I think they, at the Etihad, I kind of thought they dictated the game we were going to play. But when we brought them back to LSV for the Conti game, I thought we dictated. And I wasn't that impressed with them at LSV for the Conti game. So the question I'm going to ask is, do we have the capabilities of beating? We've beaten City, but can we jump over? You know, the Conti game, it was a big jump for us because, you know, we were on a decent run. So what were your thoughts when we were drawn against City? And do you think we would have beaten them as comfortably as we did? Ian?
The Conti draw didn't surprise me. Again, me and Shane said straight away at the end of last season, you know, City to open in the WSL, and we will get City in the Conti because we didn't have them the year prior. The FA deliberately kept us apart the previous year, in my opinion. So to get them in the Conti Cup didn't surprise me. I don't think it's a draw. I just personally think I just think they picked teams because I don't see how you can do a random draw and suddenly only get one WSL team in a group, like Liverpool had in their group. So I personally don't think it was a draw. I personally think it was, yeah, let's see what type of good fixtures we can pick out of this. The Conti Cup game, yeah, I was going to say, I've not been that impressed with City all season, if I'm honest. You know, if we had taken our chances, we could have beaten them. You know, they didn't, you know, apart from the goal from Caroline Weir, they didn't really trouble us that much until we started sitting back in, you know, mid to late second half. That's when they started, but we were well on top before then. But obviously, the Conti Cup game, we were on top from the beginning. Obviously, Katie Zellen's free kick was about 10 minutes in. Probably settled the nerves down because it was a bit end-to-end before that. And then obviously, you know, they went down to 10 as well. So that never helped them. And obviously, the icing on the cake was Jess's second. The second goal from Jess. So, if I'm honest with you, I think, you know, City aren't the team, the team they are at the moment. I think we could beat them again with the squad we've got. I think the step up is to the Arsenals and to the Chelseas. I think we're not far away from City, and obviously they don't have a manager anymore. So we don't know what's going to happen with them in the future.
Fiona.
Yeah, so when we saw the draw, it wasn't a surprise that we'd get City, because I'm sure they did northern groups and southern groups. So yeah, not a surprise that we would get them. And yeah, we'd had a good run of games up to that point. So we were probably going into it quite confident as well. So I think that helped. I think this season we have looked good against the bigger teams. We've been unfortunate not to get more points from them. We haven't really lost them by many goals if we have lost. So I think that helps our confidence for the next season or for future games as well, knowing that we can do it against the bigger teams. I think some of the games though we just haven't looked clinical enough. Last season we could, score goals for fun, and against the better clubs, the top three, they're not just going to let anything in. So I think we did have chances at the Etihad and in the cup, and clearly plenty of chances in the cup to score. But I think that is something that Casey probably needs to think about or work on for future games against the big ones. Yeah, Chelsea, Arsenal, I think I probably agree with Ian, they're probably at the moment in better form, have been playing better than City have. But that doesn't mean, as somebody who's just been promoted, City is going to be shouldn't be seen as anything but a challenge. And I think we rose up to that, so that was quite good as well.
Jack?
In agreement, pretty much. I mean, people have said not being impressed with City. I'll be honest, not really that impressed with all the league. I'm not going to say we don't have a ways to go yet. We do. But I think with the right signings in key positions, first of all, we would be more consistent. Our squad would be less vulnerable to, the suspensions and injuries that we've accumulated and that every team accumulates throughout the season. And potentially we could get the winning goals that maybe were a bit missing in a few of the matches. Like if you want to look at the matches, I think it's funny to think that the whole season revolves around it. But if Jane Ross's chance goes in against City on the opening day, or if she scores that chance that she had against Arsenal, or if Tooney, she had a header that just went wide, and also against Chelsea, that chance that hit the crossbar somehow didn't go in. Those little chances, they turn the season around completely. We know that we're lacking in a few areas, but I really don't think that we're that far off. And specifically to City, we've shown it. We can beat them on the day. It's just about being a bit more consistent on a regular basis. And that's more about playing the rest of the league rather than the top three. But also against the top three, we've shown that we can do it. It's just a matter of taking chances when they pop up, and maybe for that we need a bit of strengthening in a few key areas.
So from what I've listened to all of you, and from what I'm understanding from all of this, is that we've not been clinical enough, which I think we can all agree on, that there's been chances where we should have scored more. And if we could all, I think we all want a new striker in potentially next season. We're not going to mention any names because everyone differs on who we want. The other point for me was obviously Kira Walsh got sent off against us, which I think got a bigger cheer than probably one of the goals. I know, especially Deborah next to me, she was cheering away for that. That made a day. Then, I thought it was a comfortable win personally, I wasn't that impressed. And I think what, as Jack says, you know, and Fiona said, Chelsea and Arsenal are just that little bit above where we are. But City, and as we've all said, City are there for the taking. I was surprised in a way of how easy that 2-0 win looked for us, because I didn't think they looked bothered for it, to be honest. And then that brings us forward to the FA Cup. 4th round, draws on BBC. Who's the first 2 balls out? Manchester United versus Manchester City. Now, I know we're going to go around and saying that it was fixed again, and you know, during them 2 times in a cup, and then it certainly looks that way to me. And then the game itself. Actually, I thought it was a very, very good game. It was obviously overshadowed, which we'll get to, by a certain goal, which I'm still saying is a goal. But the draw, the game, Fiona.
Yeah, so when I think I was listening to it, I heard I think I was the second one out. I was like, it's not a surprise. But again, we'll rise to the challenge. Obviously it would have been great to have somebody from a lower league, you know, and away particularly would have been brilliant. But you know, a game at LSV against City, great. We're all up for it. And I think the thing that annoyed me was that it was done quite late, so we couldn't put as much publicizing the kickoff and the game, which really impacts the crowds in the WSL and in the women's game. So that was for me puts a bit of a down on it. You know, how many? So there was a reasonable number of United fans there, but City didn't have a large following, where all the however many was at the previous City game. And then the game itself was a great one to watch, particularly for the neutrals. You know, plenty of goals, good talking points. Well, for a neutral, good talking point, not for a United fan, but you know, plenty to talk about. If it had been a 1-0 game and we'd won it, we would have taken that as well. But yeah, these things happen, and I think the controversy, because we all knew that goal went over the line. There's people who were filming it and could have got it on photos and screenshots or whatever that went over. I think, particularly because we weren't in great form at that point, I think it was Casey had something to say. You know, motivate players, and they always are motivated. But you know, a City game in the cup, you know, knockout game, and I don't think we played brilliantly, but I don't think City played amazingly either. Otherwise, we wouldn't have scored the 2 goals. But I think it was a good game to be there, and obviously we all came out of it, you know, quite annoyed, angry potentially, but yeah.
Jack?
Well, you know, like you said, we can get to the moments of controversy in it. Correct me if I'm wrong, we also had another goal ruled out for what looked like nothing at some point. But other than that, yes, it was a bit of a messy game. You know, again, I don't think City were wow amazing. I think, if anything, we made them look a bit wow amazing. The first goal, it hurts me. It still hurts me to think that, you know, we just passed back to Ellen White and left her one-on-one with Mary. It was a very poor goal to give away, and you're putting yourself in deep trouble when you do that in a big match. And the other goals that we gave away were poor as well, to be quite honest. I mean, the second goal, you know, it was just down the wing, and no one really covering. And again, an easy finish for a striker the class of White. And the third one, we obviously were still kind of, I think, maybe celebrating or shouting about the goal that never was. And then they went up the other end, and we could have cleared the ball 2 or 3 times. We didn't, and somehow long shot deflected goes in. So again, I don't think that City were brilliant that day, but they took their chances, and unfortunately we gave them a few chances. We weren't good enough on the day. That's the truth. That said, one way or another, we could have still gotten something out of the game, which again says a lot about, first of all, our tenacity. Second, again, about City's overall general level. We still could have gotten out of that.
Ian?
Yeah, the FA Cup game, again, it didn't surprise me we were drawn against City. The draw happened whilst I was asleep between some night shifts. I remember the first thing I saw was, I think it was Anthony in the group chat, so typical or something along those lines. So it didn't surprise me that we drew City. And then obviously, the game itself, as Jack said, we just gave them too many chances. We gave them the chances and they took the chances. I personally thought we were slightly on top before Abby's mistake. It had been a bit end to end, but our chances were a little bit clearer than City's. But then when Abby made that mistake, then it was, it was shock, and then it took time to get going again. We all obviously have our opinions on what happened towards the end of the game. But on the day, I don't think we turned up as best as we could, and I'm sure Casey probably probably told the players the same thing. At the end of the day, we didn't turn up. We've gone out. Yes, there is some controversy about it. We could have got it into extra time, and who knows what's going to happen in 30 minutes. Some teams you just play out for 30 minutes and say, well, let's just get this to penalty because we don't want to lose it in the next 30 minutes. But it wasn't. But the thing is, though, that also came in that period where we weren't playing well. Obviously January started off with the loss to Bristol City that, let's be honest, none of us saw coming.
True.
January, all in all, it started, obviously, the results. What was the last game before Christmas? Was what, West Ham, was it?
Birmingham away.
Birmingham. Oh yes, Birmingham away. So we had Birmingham was all right. Obviously, that was a good performance for bouncing back off West Ham, wasn't it? Because West Ham was appalling. I'm brutally honest to give that away. So we weren't in the best run of form, but no, I think the girls would all have been annoyed with their performance that day. I don't think anybody could really hold their head fully high after that game, and you could tell at full time they were down.
Right, let's get to the talking point then. We know what's coming. So 3-2. We're on the attack. I agree. I think we're making City drop deeper into the game. Ball goes over the line. We could see it from where we were, and it wasn't given. Obviously, people around us went a little bit crazy, a little bit upset. We have players on the balcony to the right of us. They were all going crazy. The Casey and Ian and Glenn on the touchline, they were going crazy. So, Ian, as a ref, Jack, he's a ref. Where would you put the blame for that happening? Because we stand at the back. We could see what was happening. We could see it was over the line. The lino is on that side of the pitch. She's got a good view. Where does the fault lie with that goal?
They don't tend to put the blame on one individual person. You put the team takes the blame. So it would be the joint of the referee, which was Michael Barlow, and the assistant on that side. I'm not sure who it was. I think it was Emily Carney, who was on that side, on our side. But it could have been Christina Hatchley, but I'm not sure. I can't remember 100%. But the one thing I don't, as Jack will know this, I tend to defend referees. It's such a quick passage of play. You have to be 100% certain that the ball crossed the line. I saw picture proof after the game that showed it was over, but it wasn't over by a lot. It was over, but it wasn't over by a lot. And the assistant gets one look at it. If she is not banging line on that goal line, a ball crossing the line by that much, she can't call. And if you're honest, where she was standing probably a couple of yards in front of the goal line. So she would have had the post in her way of view, so she wouldn't have seen it. So the blame would be on her because she's the one on that side. The referee can't give it. He's not in a position to give it. He can't, unless he's on the goal line himself, he can't give that without assistance from the assistant referee. The assistant was in the kind of but the assistant will be, if the assistant looks at it back, which they will do because the FA obviously using Pogmole's review service this season for the referees in the WSL. If we're brutally honest, that's just not the worst decision we've had against us this season by a long shot.
No, I agree with that. It's not, but it's the one that's caused the most controversy. I think.
Personally,
with the exception of that one,
yes, that's the one with the worst. But yeah, from where I was, I thought it was in. But the assistant gets one look at it. If she's not sure, she can't give it. It wasn't over by a lot. Going forward, I would hope the FA are currently investing in women's officials. One of the proposals is that referees who want to end up on the select group list in the Premier League, they have to do time in the WSL and the Championship. And I'm all for that. We have international breaks where the women are playing and the men aren't. The Chelsea was the women's football weekend, wasn't it, when we went to Chelsea away and went through three match officials before we got a referee. That could have been a perfect weekend to use some of the select group referees who weren't on international duty to referee in the women's game and show the women's game off to its full effect. We all know what happened in that game as well that we had that weekend with the referee's decision. So it will take time, it will take investment, but the women's game will get referees eventually. But it wouldn't surprise me if Goalline Technology will eventually come into the women's game. I can't see VAR coming into the women's game anytime soon, but it wouldn't surprise me if we saw Goalline Technology. Because the reason I say that is obviously Lee is going to host some of the Euro games maybe not next year now, maybe 2022. But the UEFA have already put out a tender for Goalline Technology for that tournament. So Lee could be fitted with Goalline Technology. And if the FA are anywhere near being as like they are with the FA Cup, you know, they're playing the FA Cup. Some grounds have Goalline Technology, some don't. Some have VAR, some don't. And they say, wherever the game is, if it's got the facilities, use it. So if Lee ends up having Goalline Technology along with the Academy Stadium at City, you know, those things hopefully will be a thing of the past, at least in our home games, you know, not necessarily away. But I know Nat's got a campaign for better rest for 2020, you know, the 2020-2021 season. And I'm with her on that because unfortunately, I didn't think the referee in that game was too bad. He was a fairly high level, but the two assistant referees were level 4, if I remember correctly. So they're not even on, you know, they don't even referee in the National League. So, you know, they're still in, you know, top county leagues, not anything, you know. I don't see why a referee of that caliber should be officiating on a professional game.
Jack, we know you love the refs.
Yeah, I mean, I'll throw a bit of a curveball here. I don't entirely blame the linesman or woman or referee or whatever is in that game. The truth is that there should be Goalline Technology. If they're looking to, again, make this matter, and they're looking to LSV and England in general to host the Euros, there has to be Goalline Technology, and that should be in place. The one thing that I will say about the referee in that game, the lineswoman, I can't remember who was on the line that day, but I was taught before Goalline Technology and VAR and all these kinds of things that the benefit of the doubt goes with the attacking side. So if they think, oh, it might be over the line, it should be ruled over the line. And with that said, again, I personally don't believe that's the reason we need. That's not the reason why we lost the game. For me personally, we lost the game on poor defending. So, you know, yeah, I look at the referees, but that's not the reason why we lost.
Fiona?
Yeah, I think, I agree with what Jackson said there. It wasn't the reason why we lost the game, but if it'd been 3-0 down and that would have been made it 3-1, I think it would have hurt less than it did. And yeah, I don't know if you can really blame the linesperson if the refereeing at the level that Ian's talked about. This is a professional league. Why are we getting refs that are at that level? Yeah, they might need experience, but we shouldn't be using the Women's FA Cup knockout games at that level to be, oh, let's give them some experience to have a go at it kind of thing. This is professional teams, and we should show them some respect by providing refs of the right quality. Now, doesn't mean we need to have a Premier League ref every game. I think we'd probably be happy with somebody who's refereed in League 1 and League 2 at the moment with some of the refs that we've had. So yeah, I think obviously a controversial moment like that in a big game is going to get talked about. Yeah, I saw it all over Twitter afterwards. And I think it's probably quite harsh to blame the line person in that instance. The FA should be providing the support to make sure they are good quality. But yeah, I think the fact that everybody else knew it was a goal, apart from them, I think that's what really, I think, annoyed most fans.
Yeah, I mean, as Nat said in the comments, at least they said sorry after. They realised it was a goal. They apologised. Obviously, that does no good after the game. We obviously wanted them to give the goal. I think so. Let's talk about this season. Would you fair to say we've been hit and miss? Do you think, Fiona?
Yeah, I think that's probably reasonable to say that. We've had some very good games, and then we've had some games where you're just like, where are the players from a few weeks ago? Just take the Bristol games, for instance. We went in, we were all, really pumped up for it, like, yeah, we're going to win this. I think Nat said to Millie Turner on the way in, 6-0, yeah. And now we were probably quite confident. Yeah, this is Bristol towards the bottom of the league, and then we go and lose it 1-0. And I think in some of the games where we have won, we've looked poor, but we've still managed to win. And there've been games where we probably have played quite well and been unfortunate to lose. But I think for next season, or whatever happens next, we need to be consistent against the lower teams. Great that we're challenging Arsenal and Man City and Chelsea in those games, but we really need to be picking up those 3 points against the lower teams. If we want to challenge for top 3, that's something that we really need to work on. And they are being consistent. Yeah. And I think the players have shown that they can play well together. We don't change our formation, we don't change our players a lot. It just seems like some days they turn up and some days it just doesn't happen. So yeah.
Jack? Because I know you're obviously one of the biggest critics. So hit and miss this season? Ian, do you want to answer? Do you want to go?
The season all in all, you look at the first 2 league games we got. City away, Arsenal at home. If we're all honest, we would have been happy if we could have taken a point from those 2, 1 point out of those 2 games, which obviously we didn't. We battled right to the end against Arsenal, and then lost it. But the girls put in a shift, and obviously then we had the Liverpool game after that. Don't remember much of the Liverpool game, I'll be honest, because I was half asleep. But we got the first 3 points on the board there. Then we went on that run. Went down to Spurs at the Hive, won. Then we beat City in the Conti Cup. We then beat Reading at home. Then we went over to Everton in the Conti Cup and won fairly easily. Was 3-0, I think, wasn't it? And then we went and played Chelsea. Again, that game could have been different depending on the referee. We could have come out of that with a draw. We only lost 1-0 to a penalty the referee apologised for after the game, saying, sorry, got it wrong. So, but if we're honest, after that, take the Chelsea result out, and the West Ham result, 2019 actually wasn't too bad. It's been since the turn of the year, our form wasn't great. We've all mentioned it. First game back, Bristol City. City had put 7 past them. I can't remember exactly how many it was, but it was at Arsenal who put stupid numbers past them. So we thought that should be a nice, easy game to get back into, and we get beaten 1-0. We then played Brighton in the Conti, didn't we, in the quarters? Wasn't a great game, if we're honest. We were lucky in that game. But then we did bounce back because we played Spurs, beat them well. Then we had the FA Cup game against City, which we've already been over. And then obviously in the midweek, we played Chelsea in the Conti. We had a couple of really tough fixtures back to back, in which we lost. And then we went on the run of the 2 draws. Obviously, Reading We all know what happened at Reading. We shouldn't really have drawn that game. We should have won it. And then Brighton on that horrible wet night down here in Sussex, which wasn't a brilliant game either. But if we're honest, we were missing a couple of players some of those games. We were missing Leah. We didn't have the width. So as people, as Jack and Fiona said, injuries have hampered us in the last couple of months. And Leah came back for the Everton game, and look how well we played. If we take out conceding 2 late goals, one of them very much wind assisted, it was a really good performance. So I was obviously then we were coming into that month break again. We should have been playing. We should have played a month later after the FA Cup and the international break. But it was a good result to go into. So all in all, I think it's been a good first season. It's not been a great first season, but if you had told me that we would finish the season, well, if we are, at the moment we're 4th in the league. We have 2 games in hand over City at the top and a game in hand over pretty much I think everybody around us, which could cement 4th. I would have bit your hand off a 4th at the beginning of the season.
Jack, can you hear me now? I think Jack's having some technical problems, so we'll start to wrap up in a way. So obviously we're in the situation of being in their isolation. The football leagues are getting pushed and pushed and pushed. So what do you want to happen? Ian?
I would love the seasons to be completed, but it's got to be completed by a sensible time. In the women's game, it's not too much of an issue if we don't finish until the end of July, because players are currently off about obviously off at the moment, so they're not playing, but they are still keeping themselves fit as they can. But it's what they would be doing in an off season. So hopefully we can resume, by the end of July, get all the games. What are there to be played? 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Is it? I think 9 games we still have to play. It might mean playing Sunday, Wednesday, Sunday for a couple of weeks, to get them all in. But I would love the season to be finished. But my gut feeling is that the WSL and the Championship, and if I'm honest, the Premier League, the EFL, and the National Leagues, I have a feeling we're heading towards voiding the seasons like the rest of the divisions in the UK, in England. I think my gut feeling is all the seasons will be voided.
Fiona?
I think for the WSL, it's probably going to get voided. I could see why they wouldn't for the Premier League, because money is quite important in that. But I think for the WSL, it's just going to be difficult for them to fit all of the games in, because bearing in mind when the players come back, they'll need to have a bit of a mini pre-season, work on their match fitness again and that kind of things. It's not too many games. You could probably play them if they can do it in a timely manner. I think the issue is also then going to be how will it impact the next season if we do play them, because we've got things like the Olympics the year after, so you can't say carry on this season and then in November we'll start the new season, because you just won't fit the games in, with international breaks as well and that kind of thing. So I think they have to be sensible. I think they also have to take into account what's happening in other leagues. So what's happening in Germany, what's happening in America, potentially because of transfers. So we've seen Chelsea have got somebody from Germany who signed a pre-contract, so she'll come for the next season. But what happens if the Bundesliga in Germany does something, and how will that impact things as well? So I think there's lots of things that the FA need to consider, and I don't think it's an easy decision. I think if the games came back behind closed doors, you'll have quite a few angry fans. And yeah, I think at the moment, obviously, health is most important, but we all love football, and so we also want to see what's best for the game. So yeah, I'm not jealous of the FA having to make these decisions.
No, I completely agree. For me, I tend to agree with what you both said. I think the season will be voided. I hope they don't bring it back and play behind closed doors because, as we've always said, football is nothing without the fans. Playing in an empty stadium it's not football. So I want to thank both of you and Jack for being on. Stay safe. Everyone listen to the government's advice, and there'll be another Barmy Army podcast next week with some different people on. I don't think I'll be on. It'll be someone else. So until then, thanks for watching.